That's it. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done with CW. It's the worst. It's bad writing. It's bad acting. It's bad action. It's just terrible. I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. Fine. What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Superman and Lois Season 2, Episode 1, What Lies Beneath. So you know what's funny? If you go and watch my review of The Flash Armageddon, the first episode in particular, I was very frustrated with because I was kind of interested to see what this Armageddon storyline was going to be about. Obviously, Armageddon, the end of the world. It sounds like pretty intense thriller, action type of thing. The first episode was none of that. It was mostly side stories, mostly focused on showing where all the characters are at that point. And then at the very end, they threw in here's the hook for Armageddon. Here's what we're going with. Here's the story. And it was very frustrating because it felt like a filler episode that they focused so much on the side stories and hardly at all on Armageddon. What I find hilarious about that is you come to this episode and it's mostly focused on the side stories, showing where all the characters are, and at the very end, we have a little glimpse of what might the story be about for this season. And what's funny about it is I thought this was a really good episode. And I think the big thing about it is I like these characters more. I like the setup, I like the acting, I like the writing for the show a whole hell of a lot more than I do for The Flash. Because I feel like this show is written for adults. It's a lot more mature, even though they do have some storylines for kids in high school type of thing. I still feel like it's written much more maturely and written from a more realistic point of view. Even though some of these stories aren't even that realistic, they still tackle them very realistically. So first we'll focus on probably the two stories that I was about, and it's only because I don't really relate to them nearly as much, and I don't find them as interesting, and that's just the high school stuff. A lot of that is just down to the fact that obviously I'm looking at it as somebody who is well out of high school. I'm looking back and going, God, I was so immature. God, we were all so immature when we were in high school. So looking at these stories, they're written a lot more dramatically than I feel like I would give them credit for. Looking at Jonathan's story, his whole thing is just about being responsible because obviously he's young and he's with this pretty girl, so you leave him at home alone, you're kind of asking for trouble there. But it's just about him being more responsible and not jumping too quickly into something that he's not ready for because of the consequences that could surround him having sex at that age. For Jordan, I don't really know what the whole story is, but if I had to guess based on how Sarah's acting around him, she says she told her dad it's because he's coming on a little strong, he may be doing a little too much, but I personally think there's something else. If I had to take a guess, because she was away at camp all summer, or I don't even know if it was during summer or not. If I had to guess, she met a guy while she was there and kind of connected with him a bit more, and so now she either feels guilty or she maybe wants to move on from Jordan, maybe start talking to this guy. I don't know, but it doesn't feel like it's just, oh, Jordan's doing a little too much. Maybe that is the case. Maybe he was doing too much over the summer, like constantly texting her, like we saw, texted her twice here at the end and she just kind of ignored it. So maybe he is just being a little too strong and she's kind of had enough of it. She prefers somebody that is not so, oh my gosh, I want to see you. I want to see you all the time. I want to be with you. And if that's the case, then again, that's a very childish, more immature story to have. Because yeah, at that age might be a little too much, but ultimately once you get older, you're going to have to realize that you're going to want to be with somebody who wants to be around you all the time. Maybe not on that level, but he's very much a child. So I'm sure some of that is coming from the fact that he is young and he is excited to have this girlfriend, and especially because of the two, he is the less popular of the two Kent kids. I'm sure he's just overly excited to be with somebody, and I'm sure that would calm down the older that they got. But whatever the case, it is definitely not the most interesting story. I'm not saying it's bad. I just personally don't find those stories as interesting as some of the other stories going on. The next story that I do find somewhat interesting, but not quite as interesting as the others, is the whole story with Kyle and Lana. Just because it does feel like it doesn't feel like this story really has legs. Like Kyle, if he continues to dwell on this, it's going to make him seem a little bit immature in how he's handling this. And for Lana, if there is something possibly there between her and this, I don't remember his name now, but the guy that she's basically help campaign, then obviously that'll make her look like a terrible person. So I don't really feel like this story has legs. I feel like this is one that hopefully kind of dies out with this episode and we don't really see more of it. I assume the campaign will probably take up time throughout the season, but just this whole idea that Kyle is jealous of how much time she's spending with this guy, I really hope that that doesn't pop up too much more, because if so, it's just going to feel like you're kind of acting like a little bit of an idiot here. You realize she's trying to help. She's trying to help this guy campaign and win, and he seems like a decent guy who might actually do stuff to help out the town. So if you're going to act all jealous because she's trying to help him win, then it feels a little childish from you. However, I do like how it does parallel with a better story and what Clark and Lois were going through in this episode. I don't think this is going to continue. It feels like they kind of resolved it at the end. But just how Clark wanted to talk to her, wanted to figure out what was going on, and she didn't really want to. And there is a little bit of both on this. I think on the one hand, Clark does need to respect the fact that if she doesn't want to talk about it, he doesn't need to force her to. And I do think he was probably getting a little pushy at times. Obviously, we didn't see the whole 3 months that she was avoiding talking about it. But I would assume, based on her reactions, that she kind of felt like that he was pushing her. But for her side, obviously, it's not healthy to bury what you're feeling and just not talk about what's happening and what you're going through and lash out whenever you get frustrated. So I do think it's probably a bit of both. There definitely needed to be that communication. And I think it was kind of healthy how they both worked through that, where Clark was talking to Lana about it and kind of realized maybe it was best not to push so hard. But then, of course, for Lois, she realized after Jordan wouldn't tell her what was going on, how much it frustrated her. Okay, that's how Clark feels. I get it now. But I will say the story with Lois and what she's dealing with Natalie, that is something that it's not relatable, but I still find it very interesting. Because imagine that happening. Imagine you've got this daughter in another world that you had, but obviously it's not you, it's another version of you. And then all of a sudden she shows up, she looks at you like, you're my mom. But how would you react? How would you deal with that? It's a really interesting story that I feel like they're handling very maturely, on top of the fact that it is interesting, because neither of them are acting out of line, in my opinion. For Natalie, there's not really a sense of, oh, she looks like my mom, but she's not my mom, and that I hate her for that because she's not my mom. Why did my mom have to die and she had to live? There's none of that kind of childish lashing out from her. Whenever they have their talk, she very clearly says that she understands, that she doesn't want her to act like her mom because she knows that she's not her mom. And you can almost sort of tell it's not she's mad at Lois because of what's going on. She's mad at what's going on. And that's kind of understandable. You go to this other world, look at it from her point of view. She's a young girl who goes to this other world. She finds her mom, but it's not her mom. Like, that would be hard to deal with. I kind of like how they come to a resolution. For Lois, she is looking at it from I realize it's not my fault. There's nothing really I can do. I can't replace her mom because even though I technically am, I'm not. But at the same time, there's the connection between my mom left. And I kind of did that to her. Even though I'm not her mom, it's still that same sort of feeling where I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I just walked away. So I like the fact that they both have those realizations in this episode. And they come to a nice resolution at the end, where it's not so much, let me be your mom. It's, let me connect with you. Because I do want to be there for you. I want to give you somebody to talk to. Even though I am not your mom, I want to be a mother figure almost. And she doesn't even approach it like that. She just says, I want to be friends. And I think that will lead to maybe a bit more of a motherly figure type of thing. It's going to be hard, I think. There are definitely going to be moments where that weirdness will seep in because of the fact that she is her mom, but not her mom. But I like the fact that they're trying. They found a nice middle ground that they both can work with. So yeah, it's a really interesting setup, and I don't know where it's going to go, but I kind of like it. I think for both John and Natalie, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this story. And then, of course, the final thing is everything going on with Clark and with Superman. And this is the stuff that obviously is more so the superhero part of it, which I do enjoy. I'm not entirely sure how much of this is carried over from the first season. Like, I don't remember this school that the guy is talking about where they're training these kids to fight. I don't really remember any of that, so I don't know if that's new information. He did say he talked to Superman about it, so maybe I am forgetting something. Clearly, they have these superpowered people that can help. And of course, for Clark, he's trying to stay out of all of the, as he calls it, the geopolitics of it all, which makes sense because if he was solely working for the U.S., that's basically a super powerful weapon that the rest of the countries of the world will have to say, well, we don't have that kind of power, so what are we going to do? And I'm sure there's probably some message buried in there about having the most powerful military and what that can mean and how that's not always the most important thing. But from a character point of view, it makes sense for him to not take sides because he is powerful enough to where if a war did start, he could end it like that. So it would be in his best interest to stay neutral, to help both sides in the natural disasters, to not fight wars for anybody. And I kind of like that for him. The writers might be trying to make a message and might be trying to make a stand on something. But for me personally, I look at it more so from a personal point of view, from a character point of view. And a character like this probably should stay out of wars, probably should stay out of picking a side. So I think it's a smart decision for him. Yeah, I don't really have any ideas of what's going on. We see him dealing with some weird noise that's affecting him badly. We see, obviously, there's something causing these earthquakes as well. So I don't know if it's going to be connected to what we saw in the first season or if this is going to be some new thing that maybe was buried. And I had to go and look up a plot synopsis for the first season now because I don't remember everything that happened at the end. I know Morgan Edge was the bad guy, but he was also Kryptonian. And I think they were mining for something in town. So I don't know if the mining that they were, I think it was some sort of kryptonite that was supposed to help transfer memories or something like that of Kryptonians into the humans. I think I've got that right. But I don't know if the mining they were doing for those kryptonite crystals, I don't know if that maybe caused something that awoke this whatever that's buried down deep within there, or if this is something that was buried down there in the first season that I'm forgetting about. I don't know. But anyways, I'm just sort of rambling now. But it was a good first episode. I'm excited to see where the rest of the season goes. It's definitely the show that has got me the most excited to return to these CW DC shows. I know it's not technically CW, it's more HBO, but it's definitely the best one out of the ones that are left that I'm watching by far. It's got the best writing, it's got the best acting, it's got the best special effects. It still looks so good. I don't remember if I talked about it much in the first season, but where The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow, it looks really rubbery. It looks super fake. The CGI looks, I think I said PlayStation 2 graphics at one point during the Armageddon, like fight scenes. This one, it looks solid. Not perfect, not movie level qualities of CGI, but it looks good, especially compared to the rest of the CW. This is by far the best special effects that they've got. Yeah, all that being said, on to the second episode. I'll see you there. And now episode 2, The Ties That Bind. So more interesting stuff happening as far as the story progressing. The character stuff is a little hit and miss right now. Again, the kid stuff is, it's not great. We do find out in this one why Sarah was acting weird. Apparently a girl kissed her at camp. I don't know if they're going to go with the storyline of she felt something or if she's even into girls or if it's just Jordan's going to be jealous that somebody else kissed her. But in my mind, if she's not even into girls, then I don't know why that's a problem. Especially because most guys finding out their girlfriend kissed another girl, it's typically not that big of a deal. So I don't know. It felt kind of weird to throw that in, but I guess it just depends on, well, was there something there? Did she feel it too? Was she actually interested in her? Or was this just the girl that kissed her was getting different vibes, thought she might have been into her? And if that's the case, then Jordan, grow up. A lot of guys would kind of like that, actually. Seems a little melodramatic. And again, a lot of the high school stuff tends to be in this show. For Lois, they are mainly focusing on her and John trying to look into what's going on in the mind. But this story that popped up where I guess she was investigating a cult before is pretty interesting. I don't know how far this is going to go. I don't know how much of an effect on the story this is going to have, because it seems like whoever is in charge of the cult is going after her now and calling into question her credibility on the story that she wrote. So I don't know if they're going to try to sue her. I don't know if it's just going to tank her reputation. But I will say that part of the story doesn't really interest me, the journalism part of it. More interesting part is what happened with her sister. And I think it's just because it's a very human thing to go through. And it does sort of beg the question for journalists, whenever you have your own personal feelings involved, is it a good idea to go after this story? Even if you have the best of intentions, even if you do your due diligence, it will always raise the question. People can go after that part of it and say, you had something personal involved in this. How can we trust that you were completely unbiased in the story you were telling? I like this story. I think it makes Lois very human, but it does raise a lot of questions about whether or not it was a good idea that she go after that story to begin with. Because some people will say, yeah, it's good for you to have that passion about a story and to have a reason to investigate a story. But some people will look at it and say, that does make you kind of compromised, just like how you wouldn't want a cop looking into a crime that involved something personal for them. I will say we had a couple of scenes with John looking at Lois and having those moments where he's remembering his Lois. I really hope they don't do that. They stayed away from that in the first season, which I was glad that they did. I really don't want them to focus on that too much because I realize it's tough, and I talked about how weird it might be for him and for Natalie to be staying around Lois because of that connection there, and it is a weird situation, and I don't know how I would handle it if this type of thing existed in our world, but I just don't want them to go into the idea that he starts to get jealous or he starts to develop feelings for her, even though it's not his Lois. I don't want that to become like it's going to be a love triangle now between him and Clark and Lois. Oh no. That is what I worry. And maybe it's just because I'm so traumatized by the other CW shows that would definitely do that with this story. But if it's just a few looks here and there and it just shows that he is struggling, but he's pushing past it and he's finding a way to push that down so he can focus on helping because that's what they need from him. I guess that just sort of shows his maturity and shows that he is dealing with it. It's not like he's not human, because I would say that is kind of a realistic reaction for him to be working with a woman who looks exactly like his wife. He would probably start to feel something, but I just don't want it to become too big of a deal, I guess, is the main point there. The politics stuff with Kyle and Lana isn't that interesting to me in this episode. They had a guy drops out of the race. I don't understand. Because ultimately what it's leading to is Lana's going to be the one running now against this other guy who has not been doing his job. But if that's what it was leading to, then why did we spend so much time in the first episode building up this guy that Lana was helping campaign? It felt like he was going to be a bigger deal, and then all of a sudden in the second episode of the season, he's like, all right, I'm done, I'm out. I feel like it would have been better if we showed what a good candidate he was, showed how Lana was helping him and how excited she was in the first episode, and then he drops out at the end of the episode, and that leads to she's going to run now. But as it is, it's like you had that first episode building him up as a good candidate, and Lana clearly very passionate about helping him run, and now all of a sudden it's done. We're done with that story. It just feels very sudden and very, I don't know, that story in the first episode now feels kind of pointless to have that little bit of jealousy from Kyle. And then, of course, the final thing is the Superman part of the story, which we see his brother still has his powers. Not too surprising there. We see him get to talk to his mother, or I guess the AI consciousness of her, or however that works. But he does get to find out that whatever these visions are that are happening are being caused by whatever the creature was that we saw in the mine in this episode. And we also find out that the lady that's in charge of that, which I think she worked for Morgan Edge in the first season, she looks familiar. I don't think she's an entirely new character for this season, but I could be wrong about that. But clearly she is involved in this, and Lois even pointed out the fact that it's kind of weird that she's helping. She's like, well, I am a geologist. It's like, yeah, but that's not your main profession. But clearly, whatever this creature is that we saw down there, they wanted that to happen. I don't know how, why, what caused it, but obviously, whatever it is, it was part of, I guess, the plan to mine down there, or I don't know. I'm a little lost on exactly how this creature would have shown up or what would have caused this creature to show up. But definitely a lot of good mysteries with that, I will say. It's got me excited to see more. But all in all, it's a pretty solid episode. Not really too much else to talk about. So on to the third episode. I'll see you there. And finally, episode 3, The Thing in the Mines. I gotta say, pretty lazy of them to put the final title card in there and have it backwards. I mean, what is that about, man? Yeah, come on. You gotta see in editing. Whoops, I accidentally flipped. Just kidding. I know they're doing the backwards S for Bizarro Superman, but it's a pretty interesting story. I will say I did not expect them to have Bizarro Superman in here, so I don't know what to expect from it. I don't really know that storyline from the comics or even from the TV show, all the cartoon show from back in the day. I just know that there exists a Bizarro Superman, and I know the way to tell that is the S is backwards. I don't know much else outside of that. So I'm definitely interested to see more about it. Like, why does he exist? Does it have something to do with the kryptonite? Was somehow he created from the battle from last season between Clark and Morgan Edge? And if that's the case, was that all part of the plan? I don't know. It seems bizarre. As far as some of the side stories in this, though, most of them are okay, but definitely not my favorite stories so far this season. First of all, for Jordan, I do like where they took that story in this one. It was less that he was upset about her kissing another girl. It was more so he was obviously upset about it, but the story became more so she was able to step up and tell him the truth about this secret that she was keeping. And so now he's worried, well, I've got a secret that I want to tell her, obviously, and I don't know how to do that. Can I do that? And of course, Clark's saying no, because this is a high school relationship. And that is where I still do lose my connection to this story, and where I do lose a little bit of interest, is it is a high school relationship. Ultimately, even if it does mean a lot right now, as Clark said, things can change. When you're in high school, you're going to be a completely different person in 5 to 10 years. Everybody goes through that. Everybody goes through a massive change. I cannot think of anybody that stays the exact same. And yes, there are some high school relationships that do last for a while, but it's very, very, very rare. I would say most of the time it's because some people, they do change in similar ways after high school. And so those relationships can tend to stay the same. But most of the time, people change differently. And so two people that connected in high school, once they get out of there and then they start to change in college or when they enter adulthood, at that point, they'll start to separate a little bit more because they'll become different people that don't connect as well. That's just how it works. So even for Clark to tell him, hey, if you still feel this way in a year, even for that, I'm saying that's too soon. I would say wait until you're at least in your 20s. And even then, if you're early 20s, you could still change a lot in that time period as well. I wouldn't say that I knew who I was, what I wanted out of life until I was like 25. So for him to sit there and say, no, I know I love this girl and I want to spend the rest of my life with her, and so I'm going to tell her this massive secret that could endanger her, for me, that is way too soon to say, even at, 16, I think you would be in a year. So anyways, that's my own personal opinion on it. I feel like it's kind of frustrating that Clark even gave him just that lesser ultimatum. I feel like he should stand his ground a little bit more and say, no, you're not going to know what you want until you're an adult, and you're not going to be an adult in a year. Jonathan's story is kind of getting a little ridiculous to me. It's mainly focused in on this guy who apparently he's not taking steroids. Apparently he's using some of the, I guess it's the X kryptonite. I don't know how people still have it. I don't know how his girlfriend has it to give to the other quarterback. But yeah, apparently he's been using that to get a bit of a power up. Why can't he just go to the coach about that? Because if somebody finds out, if another school finds out, well, guess what? He's going to get in trouble and the school's going to get in trouble. I feel like the coach would want to know before that gets found out and before they get possibly even sued. I don't know exactly what the legal ramifications would be if your high school kid is found to be juicing in some way, but it's going to be illegal. So the fact that Jonathan decides I'm not going to narc on him because, I don't want to be seen as uncool, if that's his reasoning, the fact that he instead goes to his girlfriend and is like, hey, I want some too, feels kind of stupid. I don't know if he's actually planning on using it or if that's supposed to be that shocking, can you believe he's doing this? At the end of the episode, before in the next one it's revealed he actually had another reason for asking for some of that stuff. I will say his story kind of feels like it's going nowhere really as far as the main plot. It feels very meh compared to everything else. The stuff with Lana running for mayor, I kind of figured there'd be some pushback on it. I'm glad that they're not making it about, oh, well, she's a woman running for office, and that's why people don't want to vote for her. It's because of what has happened in the past, and they very clearly focus in on that. The guy that says stuff to her when they're talking in the diner, he brings up a lot of her past failures. And that is a good reason to not want to vote for her because she has made mistakes in the past. It's whether or not she can learn from those mistakes. And of course, she had an opportunity to learn from her mistake from the mortgages that she sold, and then she started working for Morgan Edge. So it's like two strikes, you're on your third one. People are going to be less likely to want to trust you to follow through on your promises if you got into office. And not to get too political, but yeah, having a woman that's running for office and she talks about how she feels like she's fake and she doesn't want to be fake. If only real life people could have taken that advice, huh? But no, they do focus in on how she wants to show who she is. The whole her daughter filming her cooking while she's giving a little speech, I will say I don't think that would work in our real life because a lot of us, we see a lot of politicians doing stuff like this and it feels so fake because it feels like, hey, I just want to show you I'm just like you. Look at me make dinner. Look at me walk my dog. Look at me do this stuff that you do it too. I'm just one of you. And most of the time it feels like a stunt. It feels like you're putting this on so that, they do, I do that too. I do that too. I should trust them. It feels like you're talking down to us at that point. So I don't think this would work, but I realize what they're trying to say. They're trying to show that she wants to show who she is. She wants to be true to herself. She doesn't want to put on this politician persona and speak real nice in front of the cameras, always have an answer for everything. She wants to be real. So I get what they're going for. It just, because I've seen politicians do similar stuff to what she was doing here at the end, in my mind, I looked at that and said, yeah, you still feel fake to me. It doesn't feel real. The story with John and Natalie in this one it's okay. I'm glad they had Natalie at the end decide to help him with the suit to make it better so that he's less in danger because, yeah, he's going to keep doing it. If you don't want him to get hurt, the best way to accomplish that is to help him out since his suit is not the best it can be. He does need some upgrades. So I'm glad they had her approach that, again, very maturely, which is kind of on point for the show, I will say. But yeah, that story in this one it was fairly simple. She's mad because he's fighting. She doesn't want him to. She's worried about his safety, blah, blah, blah. We've seen it all before. The final thing to talk about, though, is this story with Lois and her sister, Lucy. This girl, Allie Alston, I think, or Alston. It does feel like it's going to be maybe a bit of a main story. I don't know how connected it's going to be to what Superman's going through, if at all, or if it's just going to be something. Because again, this show does a good job of it's not just Superman fighting against bad guys, it's Superman and Lois. So he does have his fight that he's going through with this bizarro version of him. She might have this story that is separate from what he's dealing with, or it might end up getting connected later. I don't know. But her focus right now is on this woman who nearly got her sister to kill herself. And of course, she shows up at the end to show that she does indeed still have her claws in her sister. So I don't know where that story is going to go. I don't know whether it's going to be a season-long thing or whether this is going to be something that maybe lasts until halfway through the season and then it wraps up. I'm curious to see more of it, though. It's not as interesting to me as the Bizarro Superman stuff, but it does feel a little bit more personal for Lois. And so because of that, I do feel like it has got my interest a little bit. I don't really connect to it because obviously I've not gone through anything similar to what she's going through at the moment. But I do feel for her. I do sympathize with her plight. And I think it's a good thing for writers to do. If you want your audience to be engaged, if they can't sympathize with the character, if they can't feel the emotion that the character's feeling, they're not going to be as connected to it. So I do at least feel what she's feeling. I do see the emotion that she's going through. The issues with her and her dad, maybe a little bit more just kind of a filler for this one as we build up to her meeting this Alley girl. But I still do think that the emotions that they had there were realistic and they were very well handled, both acting and directing wise. But I think that's about it for this one. So all in all, I'm having a good time. I think this is a good first 3 episodes. Again, based on where Legends and Flash are right now, I'm this is the only thing I have to hold on to for right now as far as my TV show reviews are concerned. I'm just basically going to be biding my time until I can come back to this show, because I'm just sort of going based on release date of the first episode of the 3 that I watch. That's how I'm kind of handling it. So I don't know if it's going to be Superman and Lois next. I'm going to have to look at the list and see where I am on the timeline right now. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to see where the rest of the season goes. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these first 3 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Superman and Lois reviews. Also check out the channel. We have a couple Let's Plays on here as well as a ton of other reviews. So check those out if you have time. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. And I'll talk to y'all later. Peace out.